Okay, so this will kind of be my last video. It's video number 6, and this one's going to be more about just kind of the routine that has happened, right? We're nearing the end of this routine now, but this took several uh, weeks of time spent. So we're talking about a massive amount of information being shared between the two. And at this point, he's taken her upstairs, he's taken her downstairs, upstairs, downstairs, really getting into the routine of daily things. And it's sort of starting to become a little mundane, but we're really establishing that mental fracture that's happening. So that's why it's become so mundane. The same things kind of happening, and there's some mix-ups in there, and later, you get some people come into the cabin and stuff. But for now, the real big event that happened is he asked her this question if she would want to go home, and he asked this because he had been in town doing some research and finding out if they're searching for this missing girl and so forth. And her family's very wealthy, so there's this whole concept of uh, they don't want the negative spotlight. So they've kind of made the assumption that she's run off to avoid her family obligations and so forth. So there's really nothing in the paper at this point, and he's feeling very confident that he's gotten away with it. And I've stated before that if you break his delusion, he can become extremely violent. He can become extremely destructive. Uh, as long as his delusion's in place, everything can go smoothly. But once that delusion breaks, he can become really unpredictable. And when he asked her if she wanted to go home, this kind of snapped, and this really turned into one of the more horrific scenes, where she said yes, that she did want to go home, that she wouldn't tell anybody what had happened, that he could come with her, kind of showing a little bit of Stockholm syndrome, but it hadn't really taken, great hold. I mean, we're not even into a full month yet, so it hadn't really gripped. It is starting to, but it hasn't really taken hold of everything. This was one of the most brutal attacks that he could have possibly done and has done to this point. Well, no, I mean, he did do this other attack against these people, but really, up to this point, this was by far his most brutal attack. It showed just how close he was to killing her. Lots of attacking, kicking her, assaulting her, uh, punching her, kicking her in the head, just this graphic, disturbing situation that really victimized her and showed her just how horrific her situation really was. And as a reader, this could be too much for somebody to really read when you're dealing with horror. And this is one of those things where even King would step back and just be like, wow, that's messed up. So it really is a very horrific scene. Now, there are a couple more of these, but this is by far one of the most brutal against her directly. Um, and this was more of a power of dominance that he just needed to emphasize to her. And once his delusion broke, it was all about, reestablishing some kind of control over the situation and punishing her for breaking this delusion and reminding her that she is his, that she is in his life now, and she can't leave. So once this was done, he withdrew himself again. And he kind of does this whenever he really assaults her or treats her badly. He kind of withdraws, starves her, stays out of, all the things that had become normal are no longer normal. So the hugging, the kissing, the food, all these things take a step back until he can reestablish his delusion in his mind and then slowly start building back up this concept that she wants to be with him. And it kind of messes with the brain and the fact that, you can't break his delusion, and she's starting to realize this very quickly. And of course, that in itself is playing with her mind. And like I said, she's very aware of of the mental conditions and some of the mental conditioning that he would be doing that I'm not fully aware of myself. So she's really good at showing the damage that this is having on her on a mental level. Wow, some of these interactions are just so long. It just surprises me. I mean, we're looking at like 4 to 6 thousand words. I mean, they're really long. Um, After this, several weeks pass. We're looking closer to a month now, and yeah, I mean, there's a lot of upstairs, downstairs, going back and forth, uh, but there was a huge amount of time that went from that assault to where he started interacting with her again. Just feeding her the raviolis was another one, right? No longer would he cook these elaborate meals, and he is quite a good cook. And so he wouldn't cook these elaborate meals anymore. Just cold raviolis, spaghetti, noodles, regular raviolis in a bowl, not heated, and tossed down to her like she was a dog, and forcing her to eat this without silverware, without a spoon. And those little things, silverware, for example, they were made into big deals, right? You only get silverware if you're good. You otherwise you eat with your hands, things like that. So I mean, you're looking at a lot of mental conditioning that he's doing subconsciously to establish this type of control over her, and getting her to a point where this is so interlocked in her brain that she's not going to break away from it. So from there, he starts feeding her regular meals again, and kind of reinforcing that good behavior leads to good reactions. And so after that, things become a little more balanced. There's a lot more upstairs time. There's even giving her an outfit, which kind of leads into the next real nasty scene where some cabin hoppers showed up, and that leads into its whole mess, which we'll get into in another video. But yeah, I mean, hopefully I'm describing this well. As I said, I'm definitely not doing justice to the depth of this story, but we are starting to progress the story. So one of the questions that I keep getting asked is, well, is it all going to take place in the cabin? And the answer to that is no. It's not all going to take place. First, there is the basement, and what his goal is there is, over these several months that he's had her in the basement, eventually she'll be pulled out of it completely. Right now, he's got her hooked on this house chain that's covered with a cloth so it doesn't damage the floors and stuff. But eventually, that's going to lead into more, the basement will be a threat to go back to the basement if you don't behave, sort of thing. And then the other problem is that he's starting to become addicted to the violence. There's two sides of him, and I don't want to call it a split personality because it really isn't. There's this soft side where he loves to take care of her and treat her like a wife, and then there's this harsh reality where he's enjoying the fact that he has this power over her, and he can hit her and he can control her this way, and that is starting to become an addiction. And that addiction is going to be a problem when he's no longer using the basement as an excuse to do it. So I don't know which direction I'm going to go. Obviously, BDSM and stuff like that is kind of out. He wouldn't have the knowledge, nor the experience, nor the desire to do complex knots and do complex binds and so forth. But S&M, sadismatichism, sadomasochism, I don't know. I can't say it right. Anyways, that's far more likely to happen, right? Something where he can physically hurt her and still feel like he's in control without hurting her too much. He will always be a wife beater. He will always be a person that has no shame in striking her or hurting her. But when it comes to the future, we're looking at getting her out of the basement, eventually getting out of the cabin, going back to her home, introducing him, dealing with that family drama, and kind of just wrapping this all into this. She's so far gone that her life is not imaginable without him. Now, that could take a couple of months or it could take years. I really don't know. But eventually, she's going to be reintroduced into society, and from there, it will it will take on a different type of story. But for now, it's just all about the kidnapping. That's why it's called Broken Hostage. Is he's breaking her and holding her in this position. So hopefully you've enjoyed this series so far. I think with the videos that are coming, we'll really get more into what happened when he was interrupted, and that threatened his delusion. It threatened the possibility that somebody could find out what was happening, which led into a very horrific and graphic homicide, and then just kind of how he behaved after that. But we'll get into more of that in the next video. I hope you guys have enjoyed these. If not, like I say, they're just for fun. And I will see you in the next one, which will be in a couple of days. I have some dental appointments and stuff like that. So thanks for watching. Take care.